Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Putting the Pieces Together, a Grantee Orientation. I would like to introduce you to all the presenters. Each of these OVC staff people will be speaking, and they will introduce themselves prior to their portion of the webinar. We have a goal today, and we would like to make sure that we provide you with the knowledge and resources to successfully manage your new OVC grant award. There are several learning objectives that we're going to go over. We want you to gain a greater understanding of OVC's mission, help you identify key grant documents, and understand the terms and conditions of your awards, as well as your reporting responsibilities. We're going to let you know what your obligation is to comply with federal requirements and become familiar with some resources that are available to you. We'll start the webinar with an overview of OVC. We'll break down the award package, reporting mechanisms, monitoring tools, and your tools that enable you to be successful. OVC is committed to enhancing the nation's capacity to assist crime victims and to providing leadership in changing attitudes, policies, practices to promote justice and healing for all victims.
Hello everyone, my name is Joel and I'm speaking for Darlene. Unfortunately, she had a last-minute conflict. In the meantime, we're going to switch over to a video that we have. Take a few minutes and watch it and learn more about OVC. Then I'll start.
My mother and my brother were murdered in front of me. I was 10.
My daughter-in-law looked through the glass and her eyes showed horror. And she said, "Nana, what's happened to you?" And I said, "I've been raped. I've been raped."
I met a guy at the church and he wanted to be my friend, and instead he assaulted me, and I felt very scared.
There is behind every case that involves a crime of violence a victim, a very real human being who has needs and needs to be spoken to and needs to have the system explained to them.
The Office for Victims of Crime was created in 1984 to enhance victims' rights and services for all victims across the United States.
The Office for Victims of Crime is a federal agency created by Congress that is a part of the Department of Justice.
It is the government funding agency for crime victims compensation programs and victim assistance programs.
The Crime Victims Fund is distributed in a number of ways by the Office for Victims of Crime. Part of it goes to support other federal agencies who are providing services for victims. Part of it goes to support model programs and practices, but the majority of the funding goes to the states.
The Office for Victims of Crime is not the provider of services, but they fund states, and then states can subgrant the money out to direct service providers. Each jurisdiction, each state is going to be different, and by distributing the money to the states, they determine where the greatest need is and what the need is.
Victim service providers need very specialized programs to reach hard-to-find victims who are not always assured that they are going to find welcoming and accessible services when they do reach out for help.
The Office for Victims of Crime is very committed to the professionalization of the crime victim services field.
We do that through developing new programs, through training and technical assistance, and disseminating information about model programs that benefit victims of crime.
There's an intentional effort to get everyone together so we know how to share resources, we know how to work together.
The Office for Victims of Crime listens to the needs of state administrators for victims' compensation and assistance, and then gives us the tools we need to provide assistance to victims of crime.
Good afternoon. This is Darlene Hutchinson. I'm the Director of OVC, and I'm so excited to spend just a couple of minutes with you, and so grateful for the time you've taken out of your busy schedules to learn more about how to manage your grants and to excel at the work you're doing. We, of course, have a star-studded cast here that's going to guide you through a lot of this, and some of our really exceptional staff here at OVC. Mostly I want to thank you, too, for the work that you do in the field. I know that none of you got into this business to get rich, and that's not what we do. The riches are, we collect those a different way, and I think just the way that it warms our hearts that we know we are making life better for crime victims, and we all know that there are so many in need out there in the field, and as you certainly know, we have unprecedented funding these days that has opened a lot of wonderful opportunities for grantees and for OVC, and obviously for the victims themselves. And so thank you again for the work you're doing. We just honor you guys and salute you for all that you're doing all across the United States and a wide variety of victims that you serve, and let us know how we can be of assistance, and we're just a phone call or email away. Turn it back over to Joel.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go back to my slide. First, we'll start with a polling question. You can answer those to the right, as you can probably see on your screen popping up. Have you managed a federal award before, or are you new to federal award from either the OVC of Justice Programs or OVC? So either one, actually answer both, and we would appreciate it. We're going to give a few minutes for everyone to answer the questions. We'll take a look, and we'll respond, and then I'll start with my presentation. Well, it looks like we're having a little problem with our polling questions, but that's all right. We'll try on the next ones. Let's begin with my presentation. Good afternoon. My name is Joel Hall with OVC, and I'm a program specialist who works with State Formula and Compensation Assistance Grants. Before I start, I want you to understand that those in attendance today represent many different grant programs throughout our office. This webinar is to act as a general orientation, highlighting areas that apply to almost all OVC grantees. If you hear something today that you are not familiar with, that might be because it might not apply to your grant program, or it might be something else, please contact your grant manager if you have any confusion. There are many different grant programs with many different requirements. Now I'll provide a brief overview of OVC with the purpose of giving the audience a general understanding of how our office is structured, including a general understanding of what the Crime Victims Fund is and what types of programs it supports. As a national leader in the crime victims field, OVC supports many programs and initiatives nationwide beyond just victim service grants. OVC raises awareness about victims' issues, promotes compliance with victims' rights laws, and provides training and technical assistance as well as publications and products to victim assistance professionals. As we saw in the video, OVC is dedicated to a constant improvement in the nation's response to crime victims. The funding that your organization was awarded and the reason that you are here today is part of that response. We, the Office of Victims of Crime, depend on organizations like you to administer direct service to victims to support our mission and help victims nationwide. Within the department, OVC is only one program office that is housed in a larger organization called the Office of Justice Programs. This office is the department's main grant-making component with 6 different program offices that provide innovative leadership to federal, state, local, and tribal justice systems by disseminating state-of-the-art knowledge and practices across America. In addition to the 6 program offices, OJP is supported by 8 other program components that help provide offices or help offices like OVC administer the grant programs. You may hear grant managers refer to the Office of General Counsel or the Financial Department or the IT Department. These offices do not reside in the individual program offices, but they support the OVC as a whole. If these components are not part of ours, then you might have asked a question. If these components are not part of your office, then what is? Well, I'm glad you asked. You are now looking at OVC's organizational chart. This chart gives a general overview of the many different parts that make OVC work. If you look to your right, you'll see the State Administrative and Comp Team. This is the part that I work under. And it is the largest funding mechanism in the state. And it's OVC's largest funding mechanism. I will speak more about this in the next few slides, but now let's focus on the remaining components of our division, which include the operations team, includes budget, performance measurement, and logistics support staff, the communications team, responsible for all publications, the Resource Center and its website, and the contract for our Training and Technical Assistance Program, which we will refer to throughout the PowerPoint presentation as TTAC. When you hear TTAC, that's what it means. The next division I'll talk about is the National Program Division, or NPD. This division houses many innovative national scope demonstration projects as well as other innovative special emphasis programs throughout OVC. This division manages the largest amount of OVC's discretionary grants, and if you are attending this training and are not a state grantee or tribal grantee, it is a good chance you are part of this division. Finally, we have the Federal, International, and Tribal Division, which we refer to as FIT. This division works with federal agencies such as the FBI, the Executive Office of the United States Attorney, the military, the Secret Service, Department of Prisons, and many, many other federal agencies. OVC does not directly provide grants to federal agencies. What we use is a funding mechanism known as an interagency agreement. This is our way of helping fund victim programs on the federal level. In additional federal agencies, this division is tasked with working with tribal communities by providing comprehensive funding to American Indian and Alaska Native tribal governments to support public safety, victim services, and crime prevention. Lastly, FIT is tasked with leadership and funding to victims of mass violence and international terrorism. I will detail these programs more in the next slides. OVC supports many types of programs throughout our three divisions. There are way too many programs to list in this short webinar, so I am only here to focus on three. If you want more information on the many, many different types of programs we serve, please visit our website at OVC or www.ovc.gov. Let's first start with the largest grant program at OVC. Nearly 95% of the CVF, or the Crime Victims Fund, is used to support the formula grant programs which provide a lifeline services that help victims to heal in the aftermath of crime. There are two separate formula grant programs that are called the State Crime Victim Compensation Program and the State Victim Assistance Program. State Crime Compensation Program's formula grants supplement state funds for reimbursing victims of violent crimes for out-of-pocket expenses that result from crime. All states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands receive victim compensation grants, and now we can include U.S. territory, which is Guam. State Victim Assistance Program formula grants support providers who supply services directly to victims. All states and most territories receive annual VOCA Victim Assistance Grants consisting of a mandated base amount plus additional funds based on population. It's a complicated formula. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to our website, but it's usually based on your population status. The next problem I would like to discuss is the mass violence and international terrorism. The programs are supported by the Anti-Terrorism Emergency Reserve, taken directly from the CVF. This reserve supports the Anti-Terrorism and Emergency Assistance Program, AEAP, which supports state and federal efforts to respond to mass violence and international terrorism victim expense reimbursement program, what we call IDFR. I know it's long words, and again, there's more information on OVC's website, where I went over it very quickly. What you are looking over here is a brief overview of the Crime Victims Fund cap over the past 4 years. So why do we have a cap? Why can't we spend every single penny that comes into the CVF, the Crime Victims Fund, every year? Starting in 2000, in response to large fluctuations in deposits, i.e. deposits aren't always constant, sometimes they're higher and lower, especially back in the days of the 90s and early 2000s, there would be big swings of $1 billion and then maybe as low as 100,000. Congress decided to place a cap on funds available for distribution. These annual caps were intended to maintain the fund as a stable source of support for future victim services. From 2000 to 2012, the amount of the annual cap varied from $500 million to $705 million. Starting in 2015, the cap took a dramatic shift upward. Many reasons for this. There were many reasons for this, but the main one is that the CVF itself, the CVF fund and its reserve had grown over 900%, while the caps remained in place. In short, the cap was expanded to ensure that the remaining funds were not offset by other federal programs, and the purpose of the money, which is to help crime victims, and which was laid out in the VOCA Victims of Crime Act, helped serve victims. This slide highlights VOCA-Authorized Activities. It's similar to what we spoke about 2 slides ago, but instead of stating what program or initiatives we support, it directly relates to grant allowable authorized activities. Each section gives an example of what is authorized to be funded, but in no way is exclusive. As with everything in life, there are exceptions and rule changes. I recommend that for more information on what is allowable under VOCA's formula grants, you visit our website again and look at the Formula Victim Compensation Guidelines and the Victim Assistance Final Rule. Those are two different things, and there was a substantial rule change about 2+ years ago, so it's very important to look at the new rule and make yourself familiar with all the many different changes. Well, that's pretty much it for my PowerPoint presentation. We're going to give the polling questions another try. Hopefully it'll work. What is the maximum project period allowed by statute for all VOCA-funded grants? It looks like we have 3 years. And in many cases, so the correct language is that we use award year plus 3. So that's the correct. So that kind of equals 4. But that's not always the case. So we know it can't exceed 4 years, but in many cases it can be as little as 3 years. And in many cases, and a lot of times, most award project periods are set at 3 years, and even less in some cases. So just, that's kind of a loaded question. The correct answer is award year plus 3, but again, check with your program specialist and make sure you know when your grant starts and when it ends. It's very important. And now I'd like to introduce Bethany Case.
Hello, I'm Bethany Case, and I'm so pleased to be here with you today to help demystify your award package or award document and the special conditions contained within. I've been a direct victim services provider, an OVC grantee, and now an OVC grant manager. So now that I've been in all of these, experienced all of these different roles, my hope is to provide you with a balanced and plain language perspective today. Next slide. Thank you. So there are a handful of documents that will be your guide or your touchstone during your OVC grant. And so I'll be touching on one of those documents today. It's called your award package. So here on the screen, you all can see an example of just one page of a very long award package or award document or award letter. And so as you're looking through your grant files, this is kind of what you'll be looking for. It's very important that, that everyone who is involved in executing and managing your federal award has read through these and understands them, and you are actively applying them. So your award package, this document that we're looking at, is basically a standard letter from OJP, the Office of Justice Programs that you heard about from Joel, that formalizes your grant award and then outlines a series of special conditions that are considered the terms of your award. So think of this as being similar to a contract. OJP selected you to receive a grant award. Congratulations. But in order to receive the funding and not get in any trouble along the way, you must agree to comply with all of the terms or special conditions of the award. And generally, grantees have anywhere from 20 to 50, sometimes a little bit more special conditions contained within their award package. So please, 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 we all strongly encourage you, read and sometimes reread this award package, as well as your original application, to make sure that everything is on the up and up. So today I'm going to kind of cover the highlights of special conditions, because there are so many special conditions, and some of them vary from award to award or program to program. We'll just be covering the highlights. This will help us all on today's webinar establish a baseline understanding of some of the standard OJP and OVC special conditions. So some of the highlights are listed here, and we'll go through those, each of these bullet points now. So in December 2014, the federal government established a consolidated set of authoritative rules and regulations about federal grants. And this is what is known as 2 CFR Part 200, also called the Uniform Administrative Requirements or Uniform Guidance. So many of your special conditions will provide information contained within the uniform guidance and provide links for you to read up on additional information and about your grant and the requirements. A second document that you'll really need to be aware of and familiar with and readily applying is the DOJ Grants Financial Guide. So you see the cover of this financial guide here, and it's available online. The PDF version is super helpful because you can kind of keyword search to help narrow down what you're looking for. But over the years, the Grants Financial Guide has been updated to reflect those current federal guidelines that I mentioned just a moment ago. And most recently, it was updated in December of 2017. And it reflects a uniform guide on behalf of all three DOJ grant-making components, which is the Office of Justice Programs, the COPS Office, and the Office on Violence Against Women. So I want to highlight and just bring your attention to the fact that there are penalties associated with not complying with your special conditions and with the guidance provided in the DOJ Grants Financial Guide. You can read on page 128 of the guide if you'd like to know more about what those penalties are. Next slide, please. So in recent years, DOJ has expanded its financial management training requirements. So we wanted to bring special attention to that requirement here today. If you are listed in the Grants Management System, GMS, as either a point of contact or a financial point of contact, you must complete the financial management training. And you can do that through an online course. And the link to that course is provided within the special condition. And I'm sorry for not giving specific numbers of special conditions, but every award document is different. So unfortunately, it might be a different number depending on your particular package. But there is a special condition in every single award package that provides the link to where you can get this financial management training. You might also, particularly if you're the financial point of contact for your organization, you might also like to attend the financial management training in person. But please know that if you are either the point of contact or financial point of contact, you must complete this within 120 days of your receiving your grant award or accepting your grant award. And if you change, if the point of contact in your organization changes in GMS over the course of your grant, that person must then complete the training within 120 days. That training must be completed every 3 years. So if some of you have completed it in the past, be sure to kind of know when you last completed it. And you can see some additional language in that special condition if you have any questions. But please, please, please do your training. So another kind of theme of some of your special conditions are around cooperative agreements. OVC awards funding to grantees in the form of grants and cooperative agreements. So a cooperative agreement is essentially a type of grant. If you have a cooperative agreement, your award package will contain a number of additional special conditions that explain the expectation around OVC's involvement in your project. In short, OVC elects to make awards in the form of cooperative agreements when the project is one that is developing or providing something new to the crime victims field. Cooperative agreements enable OVC, through this legal instrument, to be more active partners in these projects. So if you have a cooperative agreement, that's a question you should be asking yourself or your organization right now. Do we have a grant or do we have a cooperative agreement? And just be aware of what that means. So next we will touch on just a little bit the special conditions that relate to those who are developing training curricula, and publications. There are some special conditions. If your work involves developing these types of materials, then there will be special conditions contained in your award document that provide links to guidance that you must follow, such as training standards, and there's also a special condition that provides disclaimer language that should be contained in any publications that you develop through your grant funds. But essentially, if you're developing training curricula, or any type of publication, check with your grant manager, your OVC grant manager, who's listed in the grants management system. If you don't know who that is just yet, reach out to them by email or by phone, and make sure that you understand what you need to be doing and meet these special conditions. Okay, so this is an ever-evolving topic, conferences and training. So if through your project, through your grant award, you are paying for or hosting conferences or trainings, then there are going to be some extra hoops for you to jump through, and those hoops are going to take time. So start planning now. Really, you need to be beginning the process, having conversations with your grant manager, I'd say about 6 months out in advance, just to make sure that you know what the current requirements are, and those current requirements can be found in the DOJ financial guide. But if you meet a certain criteria, we call it it used to be the 10-question checklist, but I think yesterday we heard it was now the 9-question checklist. If you meet those criteria, then you're kind of going to need to go through some advanced approval processes, and those are going to be different depending on how much your event is going to cost. So just because you're not hosting a conference per se, you may still fall within this kind of catchment. So please stop, look at this special condition, reach out to your grant manager. This is something really important going on within the department. We want to make sure that everyone stays on the up and up. Next, we will talk a little bit about your reporting responsibilities. So as a recipient of federal funding, you are required to report on both the programmatic progress of your project as well as the financial status of your award. These reports, in combination with ongoing discussions with your OVC grant manager and other monitoring activities, help OVC to assess your progress on an ongoing basis, helps us to identify promising practices that could be shared with the larger crime victims field, and helps to identify areas in which grantees may be in need of some technical assistance. So the reporting requirements are highlighted here and there are two ways that your two systems that you are reporting in. The grants management system is one of those, where you provide semi-annual progress reports as well as your final progress report, and you also report on your financial status on a quarterly basis within the grants management system. And my colleague Matt will be talking with you a little bit later about another performance reporting system that most of you will also be reporting in. Okay, next slide. So because you're being funded with federal dollars, you're obligated to follow all relevant federal law with respect to confidentiality and privacy. So this really means protecting personally identifiable information, otherwise known as PII. So some of you, many of you will be working with and somehow interfacing with or collecting or touching personally identifiable information. And so you must make sure that you have policies and procedures in place to protect that, and that if there are any, that for some reason that information is disclosed, that you are reporting that that information has been disclosed and you're making it right. And so if you're also doing some surveys and other information collecting activity, you may also have to prepare in advance and get OVC's approval of a privacy certificate. And that's just another assurance that you provide in writing to OVC about the process and procedures that you have in place to protect everyone's PII. So I know that I'm saying that all of these are important. This is another really important one, and I'm going to say this is probably the most obvious one that's going to stand out, and you'll hear it covered at various points in today's webinar. this special condition applies to your award timeline. So as all of you now know, thanks to today's orientation, our OVC's statutory authority is the Victims of Crime Act, otherwise known as VOCA. And VOCA includes language that says that VOCA funds are available during the federal fiscal year of the award plus the following 3 fiscal years. So we won't get too far into the weeds here. It can take us down a rabbit hole. An example is right here. If you got your award in fiscal year 18, and you'll know what fiscal year you got your grant award in because the first 4 numbers of your grant award will be that year. You then have 3 federal fiscal years after to really spend that money. And because this timeline is dictated by the statute that guides our work, OVC does not have the ability to approve extensions beyond this time period. So that is we have no flexibility on that whatsoever. So some projects may be delayed for various reasons. Please know that you need to work with your grant manager to adjust your timeline and your activities to still achieve the goals and objectives of the project within that timeline. And the last special condition that I'm just going to touch base on is that for awards of over $750,000, you have a requirement associated with single audits. And there's a lot of information in the special condition about that, as well as the links to where you can get some information to make sure that you've met that criteria. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
Thanks, Bethany. I'm Jasmine Diodario-Fobian. I'm a Victim Justice Program Specialist in our National Programs Division, NPD, and I am going to be taking you through Grants Management 101, basically, from once you've received your notification that you got an award, you accept the award package. We'll talk about how you access your award funds. We'll talk about using GMS and doing grant adjustment notices anytime you need to change your award for any reason and what those changes might look like. We'll talk about some of your mandatory reporting requirements, some monitoring that you will likely have during your award, and then your award closeout. So soup to nuts, we're going to kind of go through here. As Bethany said, it's very important to review all special conditions to ensure compliance and to make sure that you pass many of those special conditions along to subrecipients if that's applicable to your award. It's also smart to CC your program specialist to keep that person informed. The financial guide lists, for example, a fax number for OJP, but that does not exist anymore. So please do not fax acceptance awards. There won't be a notification provided, and doing so can delay the start of your grant. So communication with your program manager when there are little awkward things like that where things don't match up is really helpful, and just so we can give you a heads up if we see something coming through and know there might be something else you need to do or some other process you need to engage. So the first piece is that you are going to accept your award, which involves completing your financial point of contact registration, which Bethany talked about, reviewing all those fun special conditions, the pages and pages Bethany referred to. Your authorized representative will need to sign the award document, and then you'll scan and email that in to the acceptance@usdoj.gov. To access your award funds, you'll need to fill out, if you are new, an automated clearinghouse form, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But the Grants Payment Request System, GPRS, is where you will go online to do basically everything financial for your grant except the reporting itself. You can request payment of your award funds, you can view your award balances, you can print your transaction history. If you need to see why there's a hold on your award, it'll show the amount there, and you can follow up on why that might be if you're not sure what that is. You can cancel a pending payment, and it's a secure individual login, so that information is only available to you. Not just anyone can see it. If you are already registered with GPRS, you'll still need to make sure that your new award is included in the GPRS system. If you're unable to draw down, sometimes a special condition might need to be removed to allow it. So again, you should contact your grant manager if you're still unable to draw down. One major thing that affects almost everyone this year is that you will not be able to draw down until your final budget clearance has been approved. Almost everything this year went through as a conditional approval, which means final budget approvals have largely not been issued yet. And other holds may be any additional special conditions that are withholding funds that the program office has put on for other reasons, and you'll need to meet that requirement before a GAN can be issued to release that hold. So the ACH form, the Automated Clearinghouse form that I mentioned a minute ago, this is the link to access that. This is for new grantees who have never submitted it before, or if you have changes to your banking information, you need to mail that by certified mail or FedEx before GPRS will allow you to register. So this can take up to a week or two, so it's recommended that you fill this form out at the same time that you receive notification that you will be awarded funds or shortly thereafter if you're able to, and the mailing address is on the document and it's also found in the DOJ Grants Financial Guide. So the Grants Management System, GMS, is where you will do most of your work. Hopefully this image looks familiar to you at this point. This is the external screen for the Grants Management System. You will use this system throughout the life cycle of your award to submit progress and financial reports, make adjustments to your award, those are the Grant Adjustment Notices, the GANs, and respond to monitoring requirements, close out your award, etc. You can use GMS. You will use GMS to submit your progress reports, whether they be semi-annual or annual, and your quarterly financial reports, to submit grant adjustment notices for a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about some of those. When we come to visit you or do a remote monitoring visit and there are findings or recommendations that we would like you to respond to, you'll do that through GMS. You'll close out your grant in GMS. And there's also online training on GMS available on GMS, and there's the web link below for you to access that. So, the point of contact versus the financial point of contact that Bethany mentioned, in GMS, all awards must have a financial point of contact assigned. That can be the same as the point of contact on the award, but typically a different person manages recipient financial reporting. If a different person is to manage financial reporting, they have to have that financial point of contact created in GMS. Each POC has a different role. The program point of contact is responsible for the grant activities in GMS, submitting progress reports, GANs, and completing the closeout package. This is usually the person that the OVC grant monitor will have the most contact with and communicate with on programmatic issues. Not always the case, but usually the case. The financial point of contact is responsible for the financial and administrative portions of the award, and things like when a financial monitoring visit is occurring, they may be responding to that, but anything coming into the system, such as financial reports, will be done by that financial point of contact. Both of them need to have had the financial training that Bethany mentioned, whether in person or online. Grant adjustment notices can be done for a variety of reasons, whether you have a change in scope that you need to put through OVC for approval, if you need a sole source approved because you won't be competing something that meets a certain threshold, that will require a GAN. If you need to change your project period and you're still within your 3 years and you need some extra time because of a delay, you can do that through a GAN. If you need to change your signing authority, key personnel, do a budget modification on your approved budget, make a change to your organization address or a name change, and anything else that might require a prior approval by OVC. It is smart to discuss your GAN with the grant manager before you submit it to make sure all the pieces that you'll need to have attached to it are included. If something is just a basic change, someone's name is changing, that is something you can probably just put through unless it's a key personnel change and it involves a different type of approval. A quirk of the GMS GANs module is that if you have multiple awards, especially with multiple offices, and a GAN is affecting more than one award, please do let your grant manager know that you submitted that, because it may be processed by another monitor or even another office, and your grant manager may never see it. So just make sure that they know that that went by, in case, for example, OVW processed your address change and we don't know that it went through. So that is very helpful if you can CC us. So the GAN Lifecycle is you will submit. It will go to your immediate grant manager. It will then go to the first line OVC supervisor, and it can either end there if it's a programmatic approval GAN. If it's something that needs to go to OCFO because it involves a financial change, it will go on to another step into the Office of the Comptroller, Financial Management Division, and then we say GAN approval right here, but really it actually has to be put into the financial system, which is a step that can take a couple of more days. So depending on how complex your GAN is and how many people or offices it has to go through, that will tell you how long your GAN may take. It shouldn't take very long if it's a simple GAN. If it has to go through that many levels, you can imagine it takes a while. So if you are looking for approval on a cost that needs to be approved before you can obligate it, please do start those early so that we can make sure that that GAN is through for you, so that if you're audited, it's showing that you had the approved GAN before you expended that cost. Progress reports are semi-annual or annual. For formula award recipients, you submit an annual progress report in GMS by December 29th, and discretionary award recipients submit a semi-annual progress report by July 30th for the period covering January to June, and by January 30th for the period covering July to December. All progress reports should include whatever performance measures have been assigned to your award. This might be done by attaching the report that you did in another system, which Matt is going to talk about later, or it might be done by inputting them directly, depending on how you've been set up. Different OVC grants currently report into several different performance measurement systems, which will be discussed in more detail, as I said, in the performance measurement section. If you're unsure if your grant has been assigned to a performance measure system, in addition to GMS, please contact your grant manager and we'll let you know where to report. Annual formula award progress reports should include all 4 quarters of reports from OVC's performance management tool, the PMT, as well as the year-end annual PMT report. In addition to the required quarterly performance measure reports or previously generated performance measure reports covering the semi-annual period, semi-annual discretionary award progress reports should include a narrative that uses the project's projected deliverables and time task plan to discuss what was accomplished during the project period, whether activities are proceeding on schedule, if there is a problem, including anything that has been done to solve or mitigate the problem, and if any technical assistance is needed from OVC. Discretionary grantees should also attach tangible deliverables to the semi-annual reports in GMS whenever possible to illustrate and document the work that you're doing on the grant. This can include publications, reports, evaluations, meeting minutes or agendas, PowerPoint presentations, curricula, etc. Anything that shows the work you've been doing. For deliverables that can't be attached because they're too large or the medium just doesn't work for you, it's helpful to provide a link or discuss in your report where to access that deliverable. For both sets of reports, the system will freeze your funds if the report has not been submitted. For the financial reports, it is immediate. If the due date passes and your report is not in, the system will freeze it. We do not have any discretion over that. It is an automatic system process. It will unfreeze your funds immediately upon submission of the report, but it will then note that a report was late. For the progress reports, there's a little bit of a grace period. I think it's 14 days, and it will not ding you or freeze you until those 14 days pass. But please try to get those in a timely fashion so that it's not affecting your grant later to have a late report shown in many of our systems that are now automatic, and we do not have as much discretion to override things like that when there are mitigating circumstances. So the final progress report is due within 90 days of the end of the project period and should include information from that reporting period, as well as a summary of the award accomplishments from start to finish and any major deliverables from the grant. Your OVC grant monitor will be familiar with your award's accomplishments, but we want anyone who comes into GMS, which is our system of record, to be able to pick up your final report and see everything done under the award. Whether that's an auditor, future staff, somebody looking to do a similar program, we want them to be able to pick up that final report and say, they did all this, here's what they came up with, here's how the money was spent, as opposed to having to go back through reports and pick up all that information. Another report that you may have to fill out is the FFATA, which is the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act. Say that 5 times fast. That is the reporting tool where pass-through entities that award $25,000 or more to subrecipients are required to submit data in the FFATA subaward reporting system. The prime grant recipients awarded a new federal grant greater than or equal to $25,000 as of October 1, 2010, which is the multitude of our awards, are subject to this FFATA subaward reporting requirement. If you, in turn, have a subaward that is going to go $25,000 or over. You're required to report at www.fsrs.gov by the end of the month following the month in which the direct recipient, that's you, has awarded a subgrant greater than or equal to $25,000. You should also carefully review and consider the subrecipient and contractor determinations in the Part 200 in the CFR, 2 CFR that Bethany mentioned, because it will help you, it will help guide you in making appropriate determinations about who is a contract, who is a subaward, what's procurement, etc. Also key to the proper financial and programmatic administration and management of federal award funds is being able to get these determinations right, because the rules that help you monitor and manage that subaward can be very different. Detailed information can be found on page 124 of the financial guide, and you can always reach out to your grant monitor if you need additional assistance beyond what's provided in the guidelines about whether you need to report. Sometimes it's tricky to be able to tell. Helpfully, FSRS.gov has its own dedicated help desk, and they can provide technical assistance if needed. You can also do live chats with them. It's very nice. They have phone number, live chat, all kinds of different ways to reach them. So the last piece is award closeout. Oh, sorry, I skipped federal financial reporting. You'll want to know about that probably. The quarterly federal financial reports, you can see the schedule there. And any financial reporting questions should be directed to OCFO at their customer service desk. In your awards, there should be an email and a number to reach them if you have questions about your financial reports. It should show the actual funds you've spent, your expenditures, any bills you're going to pay, unliquidated obligations incurred, the money from your own organization, if match is applicable to your award, program income, if that's applicable to your award, and any indirect costs, if you have an approved indirect cost agreement attached to your award. Pages 120 to 122 of DOJ's Federal Financial Guide provide more detail on how to complete an FFR and include important tips for your reference. Please keep in mind that the reporting deadline for purposes of GMS is automatic, as we discussed. That's the freeze that I'm talking about. If it's not in for financial reports, the day after it's due, that will automatically freeze for you, and you will not be able to access your funds. Another quirk of GMS, because of these automatic systems, is that even if your project has not been able to start, for example, waiting for a budget clearance, as most of you are, if the award has been made, the system thinks you are active, so you will have reports due in the system on these dates. So please do go in and check to make sure that that October 30th report has been submitted if your grant started October 1. Additionally, on a related note, your grant monitor does not here either have the discretion to waive or move a due date for a report that is late. The system is automatic. You will receive an email from the system in this case, which is not always the case. This time it will notify you. It's a good idea to submit your final report, which is due 90 days after the award, just like the progress report. It is a good idea to submit both of those well in advance of the 90 days, because for some reason, those due dates are the same as the due date for your closeout package, and there are a number of pieces that take a while to process. And so we'll talk about that a little bit on the next slide. When you're doing your closeout, please keep in mind that several closeouts do take several days or more to complete. For example, your financial reconciliation, which occurs when they're matching your award amount in the system to your final financial report, often takes 3 to 5 days to go through. Your final progress report has to be approved by your grant monitor before those activities in the closeout are marked as complete. And all the sections of the closeout must be marked complete in order to hit the closeout submission button for a compliant closeout. So if you are turning your report in on the 90th day, which technically you're allowed to do because that's when it says it's due, you almost always will not be able to submit a compliant closeout package because those subsequent actions will not have had time to occur, whether that's the financial reconciliation going through, your grant monitor sitting right there to read your whole report and approve it, all of those things that need to happen before you can hit that submit button. Special condition removal, if you still have any active special conditions that don't get removed till the end of the grant, also typically take 3 to 5 days and have to be done prior to submitting the closeout package. So again, this is why we ask that you please do not wait till that 90-day due date to submit your final items and materials, as you will not be able to get a compliant closeout package through in that amount of time, most likely. I have now been talking for quite a while, and we'll turn you over to Matt to discuss performance measure reporting in more detail.
Hello everyone, my name is Matt Kenyon and I am the Performance Management Specialist here at OVC. I lead the Performance Management team and I'm here today to talk to you about your performance reporting requirements. OVC grantees currently report in one of 3 ways. In all 3 cases, the data are prepared using a data collection system and are then uploaded to the grants management system. Your award will dictate which of these 3 methods you use to report your performance data. Victim assistance, victim compensation, and most discretionary programs report into the performance measurement tool, also known as the PMT, prior to uploading your reports into GMS. For the purposes of PMT reporting, transforming victim services refers to most of our non-formula, also known as discretionary grant programs. In prior years, it was called the Vision 21 module. Starting this year, the name has changed and we've added a few more awards, including our tribal awards. Human trafficking grantees report their data into the Trafficking Information Management System, also known as TIMS. This includes grantees under the Comprehensive Services, Specialized Services, and Enhanced Collaborative Model, or ECM programs. For the ECM grantees, OVC-funded Victim Service Partner will report in the TIMS system, while the BJA-funded Law Enforcement Partner will report in BJA's PMT system. The final way grantees can report is using data templates, which are typically fillable PDFs or Microsoft Word or Excel documents. These have mostly been phased out now and only a few programs continue to use them. So now let's take a look at each of these reporting tools in a little more detail. Grantees reporting in the PMT are asked to provide data quarterly. The PMT will then aggregate these data to create either a semi-annual or an annual report that you will then upload into GMS. Grantees reporting on the Transforming Victim Services measures will need to create a semi-annual report in January and July of each year, while victim assistance and victim compensation grantees will need to create an annual report at the end of each federal fiscal year. We have already held several training webinars for the use of the PMT, but if you missed them, recordings will soon be posted online. To access these recordings, you can go to YouTube, either online or through the mobile app, and search for OJP OVC to find OVC's YouTube page. The PMT will also be updated with links to these recordings. If you are a new grantee and this will be your first time reporting in the PMT, keep your eyes out for a system-generated email either in late December or in the first week of January. This email will be sent to the award point of contact and will allow them to set up an account in the PMT. If the award point of contact is not the person who will be doing the PMT reporting, they can easily add other users to the account. If you have problems accessing the PMT or technical difficulties or questions regarding your reporting, please contact the PMT help desk at the phone number listed or by email at ovcpmt@usdoj.gov. Human trafficking grantees report their performance data into TIMS. Unlike other data collection systems, TIMS collects case-level data on the services received by individuals. All other data collection systems collect aggregate data on overall efforts of the grant. Because TIMS collects case-level data, it is expected that grantees will regularly update data in the system with new individuals and services provided. Every 6 months, the TIMS report will need to be uploaded into GMS. Grantees reporting in TIMS also have access to data collection sheets and training materials on the website. If you are a human trafficking grantee and have any questions about accessing TIMS, technical difficulties, or questions about your reporting, please contact the TIMS help desk at the phone number listed or by email at humantrafficking@ovcttac.org. The final way that grantees can report performance data is through the use of data reporting templates. These are typically Word or Excel documents that allow you to fill in performance data. The templates are then uploaded to GMS, typically once every 6 months. If your program uses a template, it will be provided to you by your grant manager. Some programs may report in multiple ways. For example, a program may be asked to report in the PMT and then also provide additional data through a reporting template. Very few FY18 programs use a data collection template for reporting. In most cases, it is used for grantees that do not perform direct victim service work, such as the awards related to the National Crimes Victims' Rights Week or the Discretionary Training and Technical Assistance Program for VOCA Victim Assistance Grantees. If you have any questions about your reporting requirements outside of PMT or TIMS, please make sure you contact your OVC grant manager. Okay, let's take a minute and respond to a polling question. Do you know which system you are required to use to report performance data? PMT, TIMS, a template, or you still not sure? Please submit your responses and then we'll discuss. All right, we're waiting for all those results to come in here. Hopefully most of you understand which system you'll be reporting in, though I understand some of you might not. So the results here, it looks like 87 out of 142 said you're reporting in PMT, which is 61%. That's very good. If you look at our fiscal year 18 award breakdown, you'll see that 81% of our fiscal year 18 awards will be reporting in PMT. So that's a large portion of our awards. 29% of those you said you're going to be reporting in TIMS. Just for reference, of all of our fiscal year 18 awards, 13% will be reporting in TIMS. And then 2% of you said other, and that is the smallest for fiscal year 18 awards, in which 6%. I'm very happy that only 3% said you're still not sure. But for those of you who are not sure, I would suggest reviewing your solicitation, which describes your performance reporting requirements. And as always, you can talk with your grant manager or call the PMT help desk for more information. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Brian.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Sasshurst. I'm a grant manager here at OVC. I work in the State Compensation and Assistance Division, where we focus on primarily VOCA victim assistance and victim compensation awards to the states. And today I'm going to be talking about monitoring. So when we talk about monitoring, there are a number of different types of monitoring that can occur. And programmatic monitoring is when your OVC grant manager or another entity from OVC would generally do a on-site visit to essentially assess the status of your grant and determine if you're on track to fulfill the goals and objectives that were discussed in the solicitation. So through programmatic monitoring, OVC assesses and ensures compliance with the regulations, terms, and conditions of the award. We examine programmatic progress. We validate information that has been reported to us via progress reports, performance measurement tools, and financial reports. And we also seek to provide technical assistance as necessary. When OVC does monitoring, it can be on a spectrum of sorts. Monitoring could include anything from phone calls, emails, depending on the type of award you have, if you are using it to do a conference, that could involve OVC participating in that conference. OVC will review your progress and financial reports. It can include site visits, which is where OVC comes to your location for a number of days. And it can also involve desk reviews, which are when we review available information to attempt to understand the progress and flow of an award. If your award is what's called a cooperative agreement as opposed to a grant, you should generally expect that your grant manager will provide additional direction and oversight beyond what is typical of other non-cooperative agreement awards. And if you're not sure if your award is a grant or a cooperative agreement, the easiest way to find out is to look at your award number. So they'll always start with the year and a dash and some letters and a dash and some letters and a dash and then 4 final characters. And if the last 4 digits of your award number starts with the letter K, then your award is a cooperative agreement as opposed to a grant. So when we talk about monitoring, the 3 primary sort of techniques for monitoring are desk reviews, enhanced programmatic desk reviews, and on-site visits. A desk review is a comprehensive review of materials which are available in the grant file to determine administrative, financial, and programmatic compliance, as well as to assess grant performance. An enhanced programmatic desk review is sort of a cross between a desk review and an on-site visit. So an enhanced programmatic desk review, which we just usually call an EPDR, it allows grant managers to follow up on issues in a more linear fashion and verify activities, validates information, and overall assess the status of your project. And it's very similar to an on-site monitoring visit where we, OVC grant managers, go on-site to meet with project staff to discuss specific issues related to implementing the program. We observe grant activities, review materials and documents, and we assess essentially where you are in terms of your planned activities versus actual progress. So when OVC does monitoring, we follow a set of procedures which are set by the Office of Justice Programs and the department. We review policies and procedures related to your organization. We sample financial transactions and review those transactions. If you make subawards, we will review the policies and procedures your organization utilizes to make subawards. If you fall under the conference cost regulations, you should expect that we will validate that all of those rules and cost limitations and thresholds have been followed. We have a requirement to validate the programmatic data that were submitted to us. Often, if federal funds were used to purchase equipment or inventory or procure goods and services, you should anticipate that documents will be reviewed and assessed to validate the integrity of that procurement and ensure that items purchased through the project are still being utilized on that project. Essentially, we review the special conditions, the terms and conditions of your award to ensure that those terms and conditions are being followed and that the project will ultimately be successful. So the purpose of site visits, everyone really likes to say we're here to help from the government. But really, the purpose of site visits is to identify where you are, where you're going, and what OVC can do to support you. As a grant-making entity, our purpose is to do what we are able to ensure that the programs we fund are successful. And so that does not mean just throwing money out into the wind and coming back 3 years later and seeing what happens. It means using our people resources, using our collective knowledge, working with you as a partner to understand the purpose of the project, ensure you're in full compliance with all of the laws and regulations, and provide as much assistance as we can to make sure that the project is successful. Because ultimately OVC and you as a grantee have the same goals, which is for these projects to be successful and ultimately to support victims of crime in the United States. One thing we do talk about is something referred to as a high-risk status. So high-risk status is, first of all, it's a distinct different designation than a high pre-award risk. So there, and it's kind of complicated because the words high risk are referring to two different things. But when OVC makes awards, we evaluate risk of entities, and if it's a slightly riskier entity based on our procedures, we may have certain additional special conditions, and that's referred to as high pre-award risk. And that's not what I'm talking about right now, so I hope that didn't confuse anyone. But high risk status is a special designation which is applied to an organization, and it's typically for those organizations that have a history of unsatisfactory performance. They may have financial instability, their financial management systems may be inadequate, there may be a history of nonconformance with terms and conditions of awards, or generally just being non-responsible grantees. Additionally, organizations that have audit reports with recommendations, where those recommendations have been open for more than a year, those are entities that are generally going to be designated as high risk. And high risk, having a high risk status comes with certain government regulations that specify how OJP implements high risk procedures. So a few other things that can lead towards an entity being determined to be so-called high risk. If you have an audit and it was required you to create a corrective action plan, but then you as an entity did not submit that within a certain number of days, that can lead to a high risk status. If there are questioned costs in excess of $500,000, then that would lead to high risk status. If there's a collection referral to the Treasury, which is where essentially you owe the government money and you don't pay it, then they can put a collection referral on, and that will lead to high risk. Or if you're suspended or debarred by another federal aid entity, then that can lead towards high risk. And so you might be asking yourself, well, what does high risk mean? Well, when an entity is designated high risk, a number of things happen. And first and foremost is that there are additional conditions put on your award. And when you accept your award today, even if you're not high risk, one of your special conditions should say something along the lines of, if I become designated high risk, I understand that there will be additional conditions on my award. And generally speaking, these are the conditions on the screen. So there will be a condition which will require documentation upon request. You will be notified that you will be subject to additional financial and programmatic on-site monitoring, which may not have a lot of notice. You may have withholding of funds and only be reimbursed with source documentation, or you may be required to submit more detailed or more frequent financial or programmatic reporting. So ultimately, it's additional items just to ensure the integrity and safety of the federal funds. If your organization is designated high risk, you will be notified of that in writing. A letter is sent to the organizations that are designated high risk, and the letter will specifically tell you why you are high risk, what special conditions have been initiated, and what needs to be done to remove the high risk status. Generally speaking, to get off the high risk status, you just want to correct what the issue is. So if it's for audit findings, then you work with whatever relevant entity it is, and you get the audit findings corrected. If there's a corrective action plan that needs to be sent in, send it in. It's generally fairly straightforward. And so if you're a high-risk entity, please just reach out to your grant manager, and you can have a conversation about what steps must be taken to resolve that high-risk status. So monitoring is an important thing from OVC to your organization. But if you are an entity that uses federal funds to make subgrants, then you also have requirements to monitor those subgrants. So subawards are what is used when the intent of your organization, the intent of the project, is to have another organization help carry out some of the scope of work that was described in your application. And a subaward is very different than a subcontract, in that a subcontract is generally just procuring goods or services, whereas subawarding is essentially enlisting another entity to help do the actual work on the actual programming. And in the DOJ Grants Financial Guide, there is a section on how to discern whether a specific type of contract is in fact a subgrant or a subcontract. And so as you interact with outside agencies, it's important to take the time to be very thoughtful about whether the contract you're entering into is a subaward or a subcontract. Now, if you make subawards, you have a requirement and a duty to monitor those subawards. And so you should develop systems, policies, and procedures which will ensure that subrecipient activities are conducted in accordance with federal program and grant requirements, laws, and regulations. And the specific rules for making sub-grants and monitoring them are found at 2 CFR 200. So as a grantee who makes subawards, you have a requirement to evaluate each subrecipient's risk of noncompliance for the purposes of determining appropriate monitoring. If appropriate, you are required to consider imposing specific conditions. And you also have a requirement to ensure that your subrecipients receive required audits as described in 2 CFR 200.501. Those audits are, generally speaking, what they're called single audits. And so if an entity expends $750,000 or more in federal dollars in 1 year, then they have an obligation to have a special type of audit done. And you, as a sub-granting agency, has an obligation to ensure that those audits are completed of your subrecipients. In addition to those previous items, you are required to conduct monitoring of your subrecipients. This must include the review of financial and performance reports. As a subgranting entity, you must follow up with your subrecipients to ensure timely and appropriate action is taken on any deficiencies that you identify in your monitoring. And you must issue management decisions for audit findings. So if a subrecipient has an audit and there is an audit finding that's relevant to the funds from which you are the subgranting agency, you are required to issue management decisions to help resolve those audit findings. So as I mentioned earlier, there is information on determining whether an item is a subaward or a contract. And the determination on whether it's a subaward or a contract is based on the substance of the activity and not the legal document. So if you simply using the word contract or saying we both agree this is a contract, that doesn't necessarily make it a contract. It depends on the actual activities being conducted and the manner in which the awards are passed through, and that's how it's determined. Delegating program activities to another entity is generally what would be indicative of a subaward, and if you purchase or procure goods or services, that's something that would be generally indicative of a contract. If you are unsure, you should reach out to your grant manager or look at the DOJ Grants Financial Guide. That's my subaward rules. Additionally, you should note as a recipient of financial assistance that the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, also known as the OCFO, they also conduct their own on-site monitoring and desk reviews. And the Office of the Inspector General also completes audits and reviews. And those are entities that have legal authority to require you to provide documentation and to answer questions about the activities being conducted under the award. So switching themes slightly, we're going to ask a poll about National Crime Victims' Rights Week. So hopefully people will remember what the theme was last year during National Crime Victims' Rights Week. So was it honoring our past, creating hope for the future, expand the circle, reach all victims, new challenges, new solutions, or justice for victims, justice for all? So please go ahead and pick what you think. And I'm not really sure how to display the results of this, so we'll just go ahead and throw out the answer, which is the answer is number 2, expand the circle, reach all victims. And so you can also, as a grantee, you can help promote awareness of crime victim issues by using the posters and the other media content that we have for National Crime Victims' Rights Week. You can personalize those posters with local contact information, which can be a great way to raise awareness in your community about the work you do as someone who works with OVC and who works with crime victims issues. There's a link obviously embedded in the text of the PowerPoint that you can use to get on the mailing list for the NCVRW information. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and move it over to my colleague, Teresa Payton. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Payton. I work in the National Programs Division on the Human Trafficking team. I have worked for the Department of Justice for 7 years, including 2 years with OVC. The topic of my presentation is Understanding Your Grant. Next slide. When can work begin? The first step is to review your award package. The award package includes your grant award notification, special conditions, and a number of other relevant documents related to your new grant award. The project period or program period start and end dates for your grant are included in your award package. The start and end dates inform you when your grant starts and when your grant ends. Project work cannot begin until the grant agreement has been fully executed, which means it's signed by the grantee and countersigned by the Secretary of the Attorney General or the Deputy Secretary. Expenses cannot be incurred nor matching funds used until the grant has been fully executed. Funds spent before the grant has been fully executed will not count towards matching and will not be considered part of the project. Exceptions are granted on a case-by-case basis only with the approval of the grants administrator. Expenses cannot be incurred until the final budget is approved. There is one exception, and that exception is if your grant award includes a special condition allowing access to travel funds. But please follow up with your grant manager if you have any additional questions. Next slide. Expectation for grantees. Grantees must access the award package in the grants management system and sign and return the award document to acceptance@usdoj.gov. Please refer to your award package for detailed information. Review the special conditions on the award document and determine what your organization needs to do to be in compliance with them. Manage the project according to the requirements, standards, and guidance contained in the grant terms and conditions, including the OJP Financial Guide and Award Special Conditions. Submit all required reports, that is, the quarterly federal financial report, in accordance with the due dates in the OJP Financial Guide, and the Programmatic Progress Report in accordance with the frequency established in the special conditions of the award document. Complete all deliverables as stated in your application, that is, your program narrative, the solicitation, or in a special condition. Do not obligate or expend funds until you receive final budget clearance, other than the one exception that I mentioned earlier, if you have a special condition on your award that allows access to travel funds. Next slide. Expectation for grant managers. There are also expectations for grant managers. We must review the grant terms, objectives, conditions, and grantee organization and key personnel, contact the grantee to discuss requirements of the grant, monitor grantee compliance with programmatic, administrative, and physical requirements of relevant statutes, regulations, policy, guidelines, and with grantee stated objectives and implementation plan. Perform desk reviews, enhance programmatic desk reviews, or site visits, approved progress reports, approved modifications to awards. An example is a budget modification. For cooperative agreements and or grantees designated as high risk, grant managers will provide additional direction and oversight. Next slide. Common misconceptions. Here are a few of the common misconceptions that must be addressed. You can change the scope of work or use funds without the grant manager's permission. No. Prior approval is required to change the scope of work or use grant funds for any item not approved in your approved award budget. You must be a good steward of the funds that were given to you. They were given for a purpose to provide services to victims of crime. All awards are grants. A grant is different from a contract, but a cooperative agreement is a grant. Contracts are legal instruments used to purchase property, goods, or services related to carrying out the project or program under a federal award, whereas a cooperative agreement is a discretionary grant that involves substantial government involvement in the coordination, day-to-day conduct, and oversight and review of the implementation of your grant award. The third misconception, there is a pool of money with an award. There is a pool of money with an award. You do have a grant award for a sum of money for the project period. However, you must register with the grant payment request system to draw down grant funds. If you draw down funds for unallowable expenses, you will have to reimburse OJP for unallowable expenses. Next slide. Here's a visual of the critical documents that will always be reviewed and referred to throughout the life of your grant award. The solicitation is what you were informed of when you applied for the grant opportunity. The approved budget is how you intend to expend the grant funds aligned with the solicitation and the project narrative. And the project narrative lists your goals and objectives of the grant award, and they were aligned with the approved budget and the solicitation. Next slide. Start building your grant file. If you are an existing grantee with a new OJP grant award, you may be familiar with the documents that must be available in an official grant file for on-site review. The signed award document, including the initial special conditions, progress reports, financial reports, the approved application, for an example, the budget, program narrative, and other required documentation such as the MOU and or timeline, and also referred to as the time task plan. Correspondence with OJP Grant Manager and copies of the approved GANs. Excellent. Prior approval. Title II of Code of Federal Regulations, Section 200.407, and the DOJ Grant Financial Guide, Chapter 3.6, require that grantees not incur certain costs without obtaining prior written approval. Examples of costs that require prior approval include compensation for consultant services in excess of the current OJP consultant rate maximum limit of $81.25 per hour or $650 per day. Sole source procurement in excess of $250,000. Limited use is recommended. Publication plans. An example is web-based materials. Purchase of automatic data processing equipment and software. Costs incurred prior to the date of the subaward period, and foreign travel. Next slide. We are now at the last or final slide of my presentation, and we have a polling question. OVC provides training and technical assistance, TTA, to grantees. What type of TTA would your program benefit from? Financial, programmatic, expanding knowledge on victim services, program and staff sustainability, grant compliance. We'll give you a moment to answer the question. Okay, it looks like the majority, 41%, is requesting grant compliance TTA. That's great to know. Thank you guys very much for responding to the poll. Again, thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Shelby Crawford.
Thanks, Doresa. Hello, everyone. I'm Shelby Jones Crawford, a Program Manager and Contracting Officers Representative at OVC. And my role is that I have oversight for OVC's Training and Technical Assistance Center, which Joel mentioned earlier, we call TTAC. Now, what I want to do today, briefly, is to talk about TTAC's philosophy and approach behind the work that they do, and the resources that TTAC offers. Next slide. For the purposes of the work that TTAC does, capacity building involves the process of identifying the internal and external barriers that inhibit effective service delivery, then building on existing strengths, enhancing skills, and providing new tools to overcome those barriers, or, more simply put, focusing on activities that measurably support or contribute to sustainability and effective practice. TTAC's training and technical assistance specialists conduct a thorough needs assessment to maximize the use of OVC's resources to build capacity. So, as the graphic shows, outreach, collaboration, engagement, and relationship building all work, we hope, towards building capacity. Next. OVC, through OVC TTAC, provides an array of standardized face-to-face trainings on topics relevant to victim service providers and allied professionals. Trainings range from 1 to 3 days, and OVC offers these trainings to build skills in particular topics for providers in a community, state, or a region in order to build capacity of the participants to serve crime victims. Some topics are delivered through blended learning, a combination of virtual and face-to-face training. For these trainings, OVC TTAC provides, at no cost, 1 or 2 instructors, depending on the subject, on-site coordination or on-site coordinator from TTAC, instructor training materials, participant manual for each participant. OVC TTAC will identify the approved instructors for the requested training, and the approved instructors are familiar with the curricula and, in many cases, help to develop the materials. You will be responsible for covering any costs for the training facility, audio-visual, and other equipment. All participants must attend in person. Next slide, please. OVC TTAC uses a network of consultants and experts in the victim services field to design and deliver customized training and technical assistance on a wide range of topics to address your organization's most pressing needs and to build your capacity to better serve crime victims. Those eligible include victim service providers, criminal justice professionals, and allied professionals such as mental health, medical, and clergy, or those who work in the community or state agencies, nonprofits, tribal organizations, and other institutions that serve victims of crime may apply for technical assistance support. Regarding criteria for evaluating technical assistance applications, OVC reviews and makes funding decisions on all technical assistance applications. Key criteria for evaluating applications include the organization applying for assistance is an established public or private nonprofit organization with an existing track record of providing services to victims of crime. The assistance will expand the capacity of the organization to effectively address the needs of victims in the community or geographic region that it serves. The requested assistance is not provided by another federal organization, including an ongoing recent grant. The requested assistance falls within the mission and funding priorities identified by OVC, and the organization applying for the assistance will contribute resources or funds toward the delivery of the requested assistance. Next slide, please. Victim Assistance Online, or VAT Online as we call it, is a foundational web-based victim assistance training program that offers victim service providers and allied professionals the opportunity to acquire the essential skills and knowledge they need to more effectively assist victims of crime. This training was funded by the OVC office and developed by OVC TTAC, working closely with a group of nationally known subject matter experts who combine theory and practical expertise. Both OVC staff and the subject matter experts decide on a range of topics to include in this training. Now, that is updated every 2 years. It currently has 4 sections, and they are basic, core competency, skills, crime, and specific considerations for providing victim services. The basics section includes information that all victim service providers should know, including victims' rights and the justice system, which provides a foundation for victim services. The core competency and skills section includes modules such as basic communication skills, confidentiality, and advocacy. The crimes section includes the characteristics of prevalent crimes and other information about crimes including sexual assault, elder abuse, and child abuse. The specific considerations for providing victim services section includes information and skills to serve populations such as LGBTQ populations, campus and university victims of crime, and victims of sexual assault in the military. Each module in VAT Online is taught using interactive methodologies, case studies, exercises, and other suggested activities to enhance the user's learning. The intended audience is new victim service providers with less than 3 years of experience working with victims of crime. The training also will serve as a refresher course for more experienced victim service providers. The entire training is designed to take about 43 hours to complete, and it doesn't have to all be completed in one sitting. In fact, it is divided into various modules and sections so that the user can review it at his or her own pace and bookmark the last module reviewed. Each module takes about 30 to 90 minutes to complete, and learners can complete all modules or can complete specific modules based on their learning needs. Next, please. The next slide I'd like to show is the face page of OVC TTAC's website. Please stop by and visit a while. I'm certain you'll find something very useful to your work. The web address is www.ovcttac.gov. I appreciate your time. Now I'll turn it over to my friend and colleague Michelle for the next session. You're on the home stretch now. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mary Jo Gobachini, and I am a contractor with the National Criminal Justice Reference Service, and we support the Office for Victims of Crime through NCJRS. NCJRS operates the Office for Victims of Crime Resource Center, and the Resource Center is set up to provide trained information specialists that can answer your questions that you have regarding issues that you might be facing in your community or upcoming grant solicitations. They also offer a searchable database of over 30,000 victim-related documents. That database is available on the NCJRS website, along with a comprehensive Q&A database. And through that website, you can also order publications and videos that are offered from the Office for Victims of Crime. In addition, you can subscribe to the e-newsletters that OVC has offered, and that will keep you informed on OVC releases, announcements, and other OVC partner agency information. OVC created the Vicarious Trauma Toolkit. This toolkit has over 500 resources that have been vetted through experts in the field, and it's set up to assist you and your community and organization in dealing with vicarious trauma. You can access the OVC Vicarious Trauma Toolkit at ovc.gov/VTT. From that site, you can have access to procedures, policies, practices that are available and being used in the field, as well as websites, podcasts, and videos that can help you. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the OVC Victims of Mass Violence Terrorism. This website was developed to assist communities in preparing and responding to victims of mass violence and terrorism in the most timely manner possible. And you can also access this website through the OVC website at ovc.gov. In addition, there are some resources available that we have links to in the slides. These slides will be posted to the OVC website, so you will be able to copy down these emails and have access to them. Most of these websites were mentioned throughout the presentation today, such as the DOJ Financial Guide, OVC Training and Technical Assistance Center, GMS. So you have access to all that information. We are running very short on time, so we're going to hurry up and we're going to jump in and address some questions at this time.
All right. I'm going to help out. Well, again, thank you, everybody, for attending, and I'm going to go over some of the general questions that we have. I see one that I'm going to answer. Where in GMS can you find the financial management training? Well, nowhere. It's not in GMS, so you don't want to go anywhere near GMS or you will never find it. If you go to, there are several locations you can get to it. You can actually click on it through the financial guide, but the easiest way is to go www.ojp.gov, and within, I think there's a training link that goes on. They change your website all the time. If you go through that, you will be able to find that online financial training or the regional training and schedule, even though that's only open for probably a week before those fill up. But right now, to meet the requirement, it's probably best to do the online financial training. Any questions?
One question we've been asked several times is if slides from today's presentation will be made available. The slides, as well as a recording of the presentation, will be made available approximately 10 business days from now. We will post them to ovc.gov, and we'll also send out an email notice to all registered attendees that this material is now available online.
I saw another question about evaluations. How should it be, if you have evaluations within your grant or cooperative agreement, should you use a form to subgrant or contract or other? And the answer is it really depends on the solicitation. Contact your grant program specialist. In most cases, it's going to be a contract, but there are some where it's subaward. So there's too many variables to give you a direct answer for everybody. So contact your program specialist, grant manager, monitor. Usually it might even say that within your solicitation, but it might not. It depends. Any other?
Another question is, where can I find the 10-question checklist for the conference and trainings? So that you can also access that information on page 81, is it? Of the DOJ Financial Guide, and the URL for that financial guide is included in the slides. How long does it usually take to receive notification to spend funding?
Notification to spend funding?
Yes.
Or that you're now allowed to spend funding?
You're now allowed.
Yeah, I mean, that depends on when you receive financial clearance, final financial clearance, so that can really depend when you have access in GPRS. So that's variable depending on how many of the things are done.
It also depends on how long it takes for your budget to be approved. Since so many went through as conditionals this year, it's taking a very long time. We have not even gotten very many initial financial reviews yet. When we have a final budget clearance for you and everything's been cleared, you will find out from your grant monitor pretty immediately as soon as all of that clears. But it's getting that cleared that takes the time. Things that you can do to improve that time is once an initial financial review comes through from OCFO, if it involves questions for you or corrections, the faster that you can get that back to us for us to send back to OCFO, the faster your budget approval should come through, because they're operating right now on a first in, first out basis.
And the best thing is do your grant manager program specialist, you give it to them. You don't stick it anywhere in GMS. They're going to deal with that and put it where they need to put it. So, yeah, that's the number one. Don't get back 2 weeks later or you'll delay your payments by 2 weeks. So,
how do we know when our official budget is approved?
Your grant monitor will tell you.
Contact your grant manager or your grant monitor, and they will inform you when your official budget is approved.
Yeah.
They will likely contact you. You don't need to keep calling them. Your grant manager, as soon as OCFO lets us know that you're approved, we will turn around and let you know.
Yeah, there's no automatic system in GMS that does it, but the grant manager should be telling you that. If you don't hear from them after a while, when you know you've done everything that they've requested, please follow up with them.
And I apologize if this has already been read, but many of the grants require external evaluators. Is that considered a sub-award, sub-grant, or is it in a different category altogether?
That's one I answered earlier. It can be either one of those. In most cases, it's contract, but really ask your program specialist because it really depends on the grant.
And for you talk about evaluation, so that's a consultant, so just make sure that they're not paid more than the maximum allowable rate that was mentioned. That's $81.25 per hour or $650 per day.
If we are submitting a quarterly report January 30th for grants starting October 1 and we do not receive funds until January, would we report performance data for the period after October 1 before funds are received?
Yes, you are required to submit your performance report even if you haven't done anything and didn't have any funding. What you'll do is you'll go into the PMT and you can indicate that you did not spend any funds, you had no grant activity for those 3 months, and then you'll be directed to the narrative section, which you are required to complete every 6 months regardless of what activities you did during that time period. So yes, you will have a performance report to report into GMS by January 30th, regardless if you spent any funds or not.
Is the $750,000 funding trigger for this SF reporting the whole life of the grant or a per year award? So
SF reporting.
I know that question is that question relates to the single audit. That's at $150,000. Follow up with your grant manager, but that question does relate to the single audit, and there's some detailed information in the grant financial guide that will give you some more details than what we can provide today.
Yes, and that includes all federal awards, not just your federal award, but all combined federal awards that your organization has. That's a common finding in all types of audits. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, well, this grant is only $250,000, and my grant from OVW is $500,000. Not one of them exceeds $750,000. Well, actually, they just did because you put them together, and now you have to do a single audit report. The other one, going back to the FFRs, not just the PMT, if you do receive, this is common in formula grants, and I know there are a lot of formula grant attendees. If you missed a performance, for example, the award may be given back a year before, so you may have to fill out 2 or 3 FFRs, and in most discretionary cases, 1 federal financial report. And if you haven't done any activity or spent any money, it's zeros, but you still have to fill it out. So
we are at almost 4 o'clock. Do you want to?
All right, I'll take it from here. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We will keep looking at some of the Q&A. Maybe we'll give you a direct email back. I know many of the people who've been working here have already answered many of your questions, but there might be something we can directly send back to you. Thank you very much for attending. I think it's been another successful year. Look forward to us next year if you get another award. I want to thank everybody who attended, and I want to thank Mary Jo and her team for doing a great job. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.